Have you noticed that with Hillary, it's never her fault? I mean, you know, Harry Truman said the buck stops here. The only buck that stops with Hillary is the one that has George Washington's face on it. And those are the ones that come from foreign governments that go into the Clinton Foundation. But never does she stand up and say, you know, it is totally my fault. And so is it Comey's fault? Is it Huma's fault? No, it's Hillary's fault.
Steve, what can you do?
We'll continue to follow up. You know, Donald Trump says it's time to drain the swamp. Hillary Clinton, Senator Feingold, I'm running against Senator Feingold. They've been swamp creatures for over 30 years. They ought to be flushed down the drain with the rest of the swamp.
Wow. What was it, do you think, that made him say, I've got to do the right thing here? And even though Loretta Lynch, my boss, is telling me to not get involved, I need to send this letter to Congress.
I can't get inside his head, and I'm not going to try. But once more than one person knows a fact, it's no longer a secret.
You just blew my mind completely in the commercial break. So obviously the biggest story of the week, of the moment, maybe of the year, is the fact that Hillary is once again under criminal investigation.
That's right.
Twitter is not reflecting that.
No, nothing is. Let me just say, I'm just going all the social media. Tucker, social media blackout. That's what you're seeing right now. FBI emails are not trending on Twitter, on Facebook, on BuzzFeed, or Snapchat. I'm going to go right now to tell you what's trending on Twitter right now. Let me just do that right now, since we're right here. And the top story on Twitter, the election right now, Hillary Clinton is winning. Number 2, when you have the best Uber driver ever. Number 3, another major earthquake hit Central Italy. Number 4, Lady Gaga wants to see your Joanne Halloween costumes. And then number 5, here's the way they do it, this story. Was FBI Director James Comey wrong to write to Congress?
No way.
That's
so Twitter
what's
is
trending
one of the
on
central
Twitter right now.
forums for political conversation in America. Its founder and owner, majority owner, is obviously aligned with the Hillary campaign. You'd hate to think that they're affecting our political conversation secretly, but I don't know what other conclusion to reach.
Go to Google. It's absolutely buried. You can't find it. It's nowhere on social media, this story. And yet the FBI has reopened a criminal investigation into one of the people running for president of the United States.
Who's been the
right
frontrunner, by the way, for the last 6 months most of the time.
It's extraordinary.
Who's likely to become president by the polls anyway.
Right.
So this raises the obvious concern, which is if you have this much power concentrated in this few hands in the media, if all of the country's information flows through a couple portals and they start distorting it, like, that's way worse than anything William Randolph Hearst ever attempted.
It's absolutely shameful. I mean, frankly, you want a free and independent press.
Yes.
It's the only thing you want. I mean, one of the most important things in a democracy. And yet today we have this blockbuster story, and it is nowhere to be found on social media. In fact, it's not a lot on the shows right now. I mean, I flipped around on different channels. You will only probably see the details of it on Fox right now. It is just extraordinary.
I'm not a conspiracy nut, but you're making me one.
Remember, she has to recuse herself then in the case. She says she's not going to be involved in it. We learned, though, this morning that she is still actively behind the scenes, according to the Washington Post and others. She's actively behind the scenes, pulling the strings, telling the FBI, you're not able to look at these emails. We're not issuing a warrant for you to even view these.
Well, see, this is one of the reasons that I don't take seriously a lot of the Democratic flacks coming out defending Hillary, because this moment when the Attorney General met with the husband of the subject of a criminal investigation secretly, that was the moment when I think probably a lot of people said, maybe it's falling apart. Maybe we really are becoming like Venezuela. Like, that's scary. That should not happen.
Yeah. What we know based on our law enforcement contacts is that these new records were found by FBI agents in New York who were investigating the Wiener sexting case, and they found these documents on an electronic device. We think it's a desktop computer that was shared with his wife, Huma Abedin, at that time. For people to understand how they got onto these devices, I want to just kind of walk you through the steps. Huma Abedin told the FBI in her interview this spring that she routinely sent her State Department.gov emails to her Yahoo account because it was easier to print those records on the home computer. You see it there. This is the good example. And what you can also see is that these emails did contain ones that came from Hillary Clinton. You see that address at the top. So a lot of the misinformation that was reported Friday, that there's no way the FBI knows if they're emails to or from Clinton, that's simply not the case. We already know from the federal lawsuits that there were records that Huma Abedin routinely sent to that Yahoo account. And the question is whether this was information that also included classified intelligence, because that also would be a major violation.
So easier to print on a Yahoo account.
That's correct.
Than a regular account. Makes no sense.
That's right. And just one more point right there. So this FBI team in New York, they were the ones who looked at thousands of documents and said, hello, this is relevant.
So, Catherine, we're hearing a bunch of different reports about Loretta Lynch and the Department of Justice trying to thwart this investigation. Are those true? What do you know about that?
What I know from my reporting is that the FBI director made the decision very quickly on Thursday after his briefing to notify Congress and to what's called reinitiate the case. And at that point, he notified the Attorney General, Loretta Lynch, of what his decision was. He wasn't asking permission. He was simply notifying her that that was the strategy he's going to take.
The original email investigation, there's some very, very stunning quotes there from Department of State security personnel who are describing how Huma Abedin makes an enormous number of decisions related to diplomatic factors and others. And to quote one of the security personnel, they had never seen a Secretary of State that dependent on a staff member. So if Huma is stepping away from the campaign, you wonder who's going to fill that role for Hillary Clinton.
Right, as Ed Klein was talking about yesterday, she's never beyond 3 feet with Hillary Clinton.
We see that in all the
next to her.
photos.
Yeah, they're right next to each other, arm in arm. So what do you expect? You know, obviously he reopens, or James Comey says this message to Congress, we're going to be looking into these emails. What do you expect to find? Does anything stand out to you that you, knowing the Clintons as well as you do, and all of the cover-up and all of the mystery and the intrigue surrounding this past, what do you expect to see in these emails?
Well, I think we first of all have to realize that, as Tom Fuentes, the former assistant FBI director, just said recently, there is an ongoing Clinton Foundation investigation as well. I think what we're going to see in these emails, if anybody's expecting an email that says, we'll do this if you do that, the Clintons just don't roll that way. They're smart lawyers. I do think what we're probably going to find is more classified information, and maybe, just maybe, remember, the reason the FBI said they couldn't prosecute Hillary Clinton was because they couldn't prove intentionality.
Right.
Of course, that's been in dispute. But maybe, just maybe, in these emails, there is intentionality.
Good to see you.
Thank you so much for joining us. Your reaction to this, first off.
Well, the rule that she cites about not mentioning something on the eve of an election relates to ordinary corruption investigations where you're talking about a mayor or even a senator, where you can continue the investigation after the election because you don't know what the outcome of it is going to be, and bring a prosecution if necessary after someone takes office. This is not that kind of case. So right away you're dealing with an unusual situation. And according to the reports that I saw, he felt he was between a rock and a hard place. I don't think anything is going to happen. By anything, I mean any criminal charges under this Justice Department as a result of this, regardless of what's there.
Tell me about that, though, because when you look at the past, I don't know, just a few years, when you see the number of people who have actually been penalized for doing just what Hillary Clinton has done. Let's look at General Petraeus. Let's look at Mr. Cartwright. He's going to jail.
Well, he may go to jail, and there are military people in jail now who did far less, who were dishonorably discharged for doing a lot less than she did.
Who knows what she sent to that Yahoo account? So let me get your take first on that. What do you think changed course here for Jim Comey?
Again, I can only speculate, maybe pressure inside the FBI, but now you're talking about the mishandling of highly sensitive national security information, and that's exactly what Secretary Clinton did as well. So, I mean, the fact of the matter is we are not really engaged in a serious investigation here, and when you take a look, one of the things I've asked the State Department is who else is on those email chains? Because, Maria, we all know, when you send an email, you know, is that going to the state.gov classification email system, or is it going to clintonemail.com? President Obama was emailing Secretary Clinton at clintonemail.com. He had to know. This shows and reveals corruption at the highest levels of government, in the White House, in the State Department, in the Department of Justice, and the FBI. That's just the fact. This is such a simple case. It's getting so complex with all these emails. It's actually pretty darn simple. Information was concealed, it was destroyed, it was mishandled, and there's some pretty simple statutes to read. I'm not a lawyer, I'm not a prosecutor. I look at this, it's a pretty cut and dry case.
Well, I think you make a really good point, Senator, because we now know that the president did lie to the American people. He was in an interview, specifically asked, when did you learn that Secretary Clinton was using a private email and a private server, which nobody else had done? Never have you seen anybody use a private server. And he said, I learned when everybody else learned. And that we know now was a lie.
He was emailing. So were all kinds of people, high-level officials inside these departments were using that email account. We know it. If you're emailing a Gmail account, you know it. If you're emailing state.gov, you know it.
Yeah.
So no, I think this is a cover-up. I think this is corruption at the highest levels of government. It needs proper congressional oversight. The problem is we're being stonewalled every step of the way. Just look at the immunity agreements that were granted to Cheryl Mills and Heather Samuelson. They're outrageous.
You've got the commander-in-chief basically giving out messages to people, basically saying she didn't do anything wrong, keep moving forward. I mean, it starts at the top, right? And he just called you out, the president did, just the other day on the campaign trail. He said, and here's what he said about you, Congressman Issa. We have it on screen. ICE's primary contribution to the United States Congress has been to obstruct and to waste taxpayer dollars on trumped-up investigations that have led nowhere. And this is now a guy who, because poll numbers are bad, has sent out brochures with my picture on them, touting his cooperation on issues with me. Now, that is the definition of chutzpah. That's what President Obama said about you late last week, sir.
Well, he also said there hadn't been a single major scandal during his administration. So